Okay, my apologies for that. I think it was more. I thought it was smarter to finish my food off stream. Also, why does software have to continually just cause challenges? My restream bot sometimes connects, sometimes doesn't to the stream, and then my OBS, or my Stream Deck software sometimes just forgets that it's connected to a Stream Deck and or to OBS. So I start OBS up, press a button, and it just throws exclamation marks up. So it's it's amusing though. I mean, Restream bot that gets a pass, or Restream, because that's a free tool they give you. I mean, admittedly, it's to try and get you into the restreaming platform normally, but it is still a free tool. I'm not paying anything for that piece. The Stream Deck stuff, I paid considerable amounts of money for Stream Decks, right? So, and the software is still unstable. Sorry. Okay. Loki just got his snack and now he's mooching around because he wants more snacks. There's no more, bud. It's all gone. It's all gone. All the snacks have gone. I promise you, there's no more snacks. Not even that cake over there that you can see. That's what he's waiting for. He smells this. He smells the croissant. That's a treat for later, bud. Okay. Oh, this is a scary part. So I'm not going to do this without some planning. There's a little bit of effort involved in this. Okay, we got those working. So, am I happy that requirements are done? Not really. I think requirements are good enough, right? Obviously, there's a lot more work to do here. There's a lot more. There's edited. We need to know who edited it. I mean, the changes will eventually be able to show that information, but it doesn't right now. The icons, the layout, etc. But again, if I start focusing on that, I'm going to get bored. I'm going to get bored, and I'm going to get stuck on this piece, and it's just going to delay me. So I'm not going to play with that. Hey, Zada. Welcome in. Thank you very much for the follow, by the way. What are you doing now? I am. So, I am building a platform for project management and work tracking in general. This is an Angular application with a .NET backend, distributed systems, lots of buzzwords, different technologies. And the goal is to try and produce a tool, an actual product that is useful for both product management and development, provides what each of those groups needs, and therefore, as a team, we're able to produce better software. And I'm going to try, by the way, I'm going to try and make a deliberate effort to use the word group and not team when I'm referring to software development or product or whatever. So if I let it slip, I let it slip. But my goal is to start referring to them as groups as part of the team. Because the reality is, the software development process does not work with just the developers in a modern business. It needs way more than just the developers, right? A software development process requires development, it requires management and planning. It requires marketing. It requires all sorts of other things. So I'm going to try and start referring to them as groups rather than teams. That is I need to start thinking of them that way. So this tool is specifically aimed at the product management group, where they are trying to figure out what they want and what they need from the software, without being too technical, being able to directly say, hey, I need to do this, I need to do this. I would like it to look like this and whatnot, without the actual technical implications of the software itself. So then the software development group will be able to go off and take those requirements and build what we currently call stories, and that's part of the title of the stream. What we currently call stories, out from these requirements to actually figure out what work needs to be done. So we're now to this point where we need to develop this piece. So, hey Dota, how you doing? Good morning. So the way the stream works is if you have questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to share. I am not a closed book. This is not a I know everything I'm doing and leave me alone, just watch me develop software stream. This is a, how does that work? Oh, I don't know. Let me go find out. Sort of stream. One of those days, wondering why I cannot just take vacation every day. Yeah. It's always harder when you have a good break as well. Like it's entertaining, it's relaxing, it does all the right things, rather than just being time away from work. No, I don't. There you go. Okay. Why do you choose .NET? Is it just because you're familiar with it, or is it corporate products that why it's .NET still relevant in your local area? So I have been doing .NET for 20 years. So it is very much a comfort thing. There is a lot of products still built in .NET. So it is something I'm very comfortable with, and I also know that there's still a lot of employment out there for .NET, so it is not a irrelevant framework. Hey Frank, how's it going? Good morning. The beauty of this platform, though, the way that it's built, and that sounds arrogant. The benefit, I don't like that. The benefits of doing something the way I'm doing it here is if I decide later on that a single component or many components need to be re-engineered in a different language, a different framework, whatever, as long as they know how to receive messages from Kafka or publish messages to a RabbitMQ channel, etc., then there's nothing saying this application can't be ported to a different language or framework. There's nothing saying that if there's an area of the system that needs extreme processing or whatever, that we can't build something out in a completely different framework. That's one of the benefits in building something that is this modular monolith rather than building the classic monolith. Building microservices would achieve that too, but microservices would be way harder for me to manage. At least at this scale, I'm at least still comfortable moving between the components and managing the general components. To break it out into even smaller services would be even harder for me. So yeah. .NET is fast and coming everywhere too. Yeah, Microsoft have put a lot of effort into making sure that it is a much more feasible framework for the future. Um, ow. Yeah, I guess the big influencers, Parangin, etc., don't really push .NET, so its perception is different. Yeah, I mean, and there's still this them and us sort of attitude towards software. Um, we do it all the time. Humans do it all the time. It's a human thing. It's not a new thing, right? But we still forget that these languages are created, and once they're used in a realistic environment, it's because they're usable and they are practical for building applications with. It all comes down to what are you comfortable with, what's quickest to build in, um, why use a different framework, how well supported is it, where you're planning on deploying it. There's all sorts of things that go into that, but there's no easy answers. Um, for me, picking up Java to do this would mean I'd have had to be learning my way through some of these components at the same time as learning a new framework, and all that knowledge of the past goes away. So it is more practical to choose .NET for me. Um, but that being said, you know, I can still experiment with other languages, with other pieces as part of this. This is Obsidian with Excalidraw plugin. So I'm able to use Obsidian to track all the notes and stuff, and then also drop Excalidraw drawings inside of it. Um, and so that if you what framework would you use? What language are you more comfortable with? Um, do you feel that .NET isn't relevant, or is in whereabouts in the world you are not heavily .NET? Yeah, this is Excalidraw. You can you can go to excalidraw.com, I think it is, and you can use it there. You can actually download a Docker container of Excalidraw, which I have done in the past, but also this allows you to embed it into Obsidian, and that means I can do little drawings, and I like my pictures. Um, Pictures help me think. So the piece we're working on today is kind of this piece. We're starting to put some sort of ideas around this, and we may not get to actual coding today, um, but I think that's worth it for a better design. So the goal here is basically when we've worked on this planning item, and the irony is we'll build out the requirements of this. Um, um, we'll build out the requirements of this using one of these. Look, I didn't mean anything bad. No, no, I wasn't assuming you meant anything bad. I'm just talking. I will choose any technology I'm comfortable with. I mean, I will build the whole back end of the world and see POC. I'm curious if you go, if you have any knowledge, how do you compare the two? So I haven't used Go. I've picked it up and tinkered in the same way I've picked it up and tinkered with Rust. Um, those are definitely technologies that would be interested in digging more into. Right now, um, my focus is purely on this platform, and the only way I'm going to stay productive in this platform is sticking with at least one thing I know well. Um, this is not a small piece of software, by the way. This is 74 .NET projects, um, many different technologies, many different components, and my familiarity with .NET allows me to use those other libraries and stuff a little easier. Go has a lot of stuff in there for concurrency, I believe, and it doesn't try catch but returns the error type. Nice. Um, but again, it one of those things is, like Dota says, if concurrency becomes a problem with .NET, if there's a challenge there, then if I need to process something, a lot of information, etc., then maybe picking up a Go or a Rust and plugging it into this architecture is actually feasible in the future without any disruption to the rest of the system. Because one of the benefits of this is that these individual components are standing around. They are standalone, not standing around. They're standalone components. They have their own data store. In the vein of those service-based architectures, and they can be replaced with other things. So there's nothing. If I find performance issues in one component, I can focus on the performance issues in that one component. This component is testable. This component is independent of the rest of the system. Therefore, it can be plug and play. And the same for most of it. And that's a great benefit. You don't have to worry about impacting planning because attachments is not working well. No worries. Yeah. 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 Go out strong typing too. The two are pretty comparable. But again, it's like, what do I want to learn at any one time, right? I've got to control it. It's great to play around with new technologies. And again, like I said before, if I was 20 years younger, I probably would be playing more with Go and everything like that. But at this point in my career, I've got to make some choices because, again, I'm heading into the back end of my career, not the beginning of my career. So I've got to make sure that I'm more comfortable with the technologies that I am using and strengthen my understanding and basis of them, rather than going, oh, I like this. Oh, I like this. Oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. I'd rather put some meat on the bones and build this architecture out and prove that I can do this sort of stuff than I would prove, hey, I can pick up a language. I am confident based upon the architectural design, that it can support using whatever I want to use, which is a great benefit. Just for transparency, I get a great deal of, I'll say, imposter syndrome. We've talked about this with trap before. It's not quite the same, but I do get a little bit nervous when I start to refer to this as architecture, right? It seems pretentious to me. It's just a bunch of systems I built and they happen to look like something when I stick arrows on them. But it is an architecture, it is a design. I shouldn't feel uncomfortable. Okay, so stories. As I said, the goal of this is the product team come along and they kind of describe what they want. So they might come along and say, okay, we're going to create a new item. Introduce developer tasks, stories. As a developer, the requirements set out in the planning component of the system do not align to how software breaks down. We try and fit the software development into the requirements. We may miss components of the system. Technical requirements. So what we're getting into here is an area of the software that I have considered. I have yet to figure out. I know roughly what I want to do, but I don't know the specifics of what I want to do. So we're going to have to evolve this a little bit and be ready to change this a lot. I've done it with other parts of the system. I've done it, I've flip-flopped on the way things should work. Because you might go off and write down this perfect system. And I've got a lot of notes for this from earlier on, right? You might write down the perfect system, but the moment you start to build it and the moment you start to see it come together, you realize the holes. And that's why, again, when we um, when we're developing software, it's good to understand the platform. It's good to understand the components. It's good to understand the code and be comfortable manipulating the code, but also be happy to change it. And, you know, it's what you can't just say, oh, that's an hour, because that hour might come with some misunderstandings. It might come with some assumptions about how the software is working. And you find something, you know, like yesterday when I was doing the requirements, I realized that I don't have the ability to track who changed something. Well, I do have the ability, but I don't do it. So I'm not actually showing you, oh, the this user updated this item, which is probably going to be an important thing, right? If I go in and edit someone's requirements, they should know that I did it. So that's something I missed in the planning phase of that. And when I got to the actual software, I understood. So I'm okay with not knowing everything ahead of time and kind of winging it a little bit. The general goal here is I want to say, okay, start a story. The story screen should pop up and take the requirements. For a requirement, we should say, this is a story, this is a story, this is a story. And then it will go out and generate all the right stories, associate them with the planning item, and the story system will create them and track them. So we can go into a story view, which is going to be a challenge from the UI side, that will then allow me to um, see the backlog to begin with, and then we'll worry about status, etc. beyond that. Hey Manoj, good morning. Get basic strong, pick up C, C++, Java, C Sharp, and most of the languages are just an abstraction of C and follow the same kind of patterns, at least basic building blocks. Of course, every language has its own set of usages. Like if you don't really care about performance and only care about fast-paced dev, go with Python, which is everything you might want to do. If you really care for performance, you might go with C++, Rust, Java, C Sharp, etc. .NET has improved a lot recently from perf and flexibility standpoint, I assume. But you should let requirements choose your tech and not try to fit your tech to a requirement. If you have that luxury, there is the reality that if I'm a .NET shop, which means I've got a lot of engineering talent in .NET, then saying, hey, we're going to go with Rust for this project is a risk, because it introduces some potential silos. It introduces some, and that's why you don't want developers to just run off and choose a technology or choose how they do something all the time, because you will lose control of your software. Because when those new shiny things come along, the developers will pick them up and use them, and it will introduce more risk to your platform if the rest of the development team isn't keeping on board with that. So, agreed. Your tech, and again, the benefit here is that the tech can be introduced without causing massive impact in the system. But if I introduce a Rust component or a Go component to this system, and my development team is all .NET developers, then I also then pass that requirement onto them, that they have to know Go or Rust, etc., enough to manipulate it. And if they don't understand it well enough, then maintaining it becomes a challenge, and you end up with a legacy code system that no one wants to go near because it's the scary Go or the scary Rust component. So you've got to balance out introduction of new technology. Yep, you're migrating over some Python and Java services over to .NET for the same reason. Yeah, so it is a risk. It is something you need to keep an eye on and balance. Try and fit the software development into the requirements. We may miss components of the system or misunderstand technical needs. Um, uh, we therefore want to allow the developers task out the requirements. So here's going to be a challenge. Terminology or vocabulary here is going to be very important, and I'd like some feedback. If you're watching and have an opinion, I am genuinely soliciting your opinion. What I'm referring to as a planning item here looks close to a story in our Jira world. it kind of is the story. The planning item kind of represents the actual story. This is the why. This is the who are we doing this for? What problem are we solving? And you know, what do we want to do to solve this problem, right? Because you want, again, you want developers to understand the reason why they're doing something. You want them to be engaged with that reason. It is a great benefit to have developers actively understand, oh, we're doing this for the good of the customer. We're doing this for whatever. And not just be like, oh, they just want another feature. Let's just do it. Now, if I was using Jira, this would be a story in Jira, and then we'd add some information. And one approach to doing this is to create tasks for the developers to do. So the story comes through and it is tasked out. However, tasks in Jira, unless I'm wrong, aren't pointed. And you can't take, I don't know, I don't remember if you can pull certain tasks. And I don't want to bring up Jira because that's not fair to just go and look at their stuff and do that. But I don't believe you can pull tasks. Okay, for anyone who uses tasks in Jira, can you point tasks? I don't believe you can. And can you pull tasks across into a sprint independent of the story they're attached to? Or does the story come with them all the time? The reason I ask is just to clarify what I'm trying to do here. The more I think about this, the more I want to avoid the word story. They are tasks to be done. Yes, tasks can stand alone with points. Okay. But again, that doesn't fit with the whole story pointing idea, does it? Because if your tasks have points and you have 5 tasks assigned to a story, and each of those tasks is a 1, a 2, a 3, etc., then isn't that story what we call what we normally refer to as an epic? What if it's a bug? So bugs should almost be handled in a different flow from stories. But they still assign work to a team. They're still, again, from a work tracking perspective, you want to know what your team's doing and why they're delayed. So if a bug is in there, yeah, but it should still be tracked so that they can see at a glance, okay, this bug got processed. This bug is currently in development, etc. Yeah, the bug is still pulled into the sprint. So would anyone debate that what I'm trying to do here is task out the actual story? So the story is a concept at this point. In the development side of things, the story doesn't really matter. The story is driven by the planning item. Um, and we'll get to that workflow later on. The ticketing side of things, the bug reception piece, because again, I do have this idea that a bug can create a planning item and a bug can create items to be worked on. And maybe that bug is literally it becomes a task in the development side of things to work on. Because a bug wouldn't necessarily be pointed or it would have a default value. Again, the idea is visibility and tracing. So would anyone disagree that what I'm actually trying to do here is to task out the requirements? So the goal of this would be you actually produce the actual stories for the task. Again, the challenge is getting stuck in the world of Jira, right? Is getting stuck in the terminology used by Jira plus the terminology used in general as part of the process. Um, but we are always keeping uh, I really like the top layer about acceptance testing for what you're out. That is readable by non-technical. Yeah, and that's why I'm trying to do this the way I'm trying to do this. Right, the planning isn't a technical thing. This goes into the technical because it is a technical thing, but the idea is the why again. What are we doing here? We therefore want to allow the developers to task out requirements from a more technical perspective. A single requirement could yield many tasks. Um, Again, it could be a requirement could lean out straight to a task, right? Okay, so let's set this as required by Friday, or review by Friday, not required. Assigned to Jeffrey, and this is planning story UI. So what I've got to do here is I've got to constrain my desires a little bit in terms of this because I'm going to use this to drive how I'm going to do this, right? So let's do this. That's an interesting side effect. So the problem there is because I load this on demand until that's in the system, that doesn't work very well. So we're gonna have to figure that out at some point. Okay. So we're gonna call it that. Interesting, it doesn't update up there. It does update there though. Okay. I suppose that's loaded. So um so I've got two options. The first option is start building out the stories or the tasking, the development side of this, the developer tasks components, and allow me to add a task. That would be the simplest way. Um, I'm obviously thinking of this from this side, though, from this planning side, which is probably a little bit more ambitious than the easier version. So the easier version of this is, and I can still move to that. The easier version is create the UI, create the data structure, and allow me to create a task from the UI, right? And right now, show it in a backlog, just like this, but just no past due. Um, if a task A task doesn't need a review date because the task is assigned to a planning item, but it might have a review date. Let's not worry about that right this second. So do I start from a slightly simpler design and worry about the data structure for storing a task? That might be a little easier to juggle because what I'm proposing here is a lot more involved. So this is not promote. This is promote planning item to develop tasks. This still fits. Yeah, that is actually more what's happening. Taking the requirements part of the developer discussion, grooming, creating relevant tasks off of cells will allow core data. Yeah. Makes sense. Taking the requirements as part of the developer description and grooming and creating the relevant tasks off of the requirements themselves will allow yeah, yeah. Because again, I think this is meant to be wordy, right? So you're right. But again, in the vein of not wanting to just keep tweaking things like that, identifying those challenges, identifying those pain points is going to be useful. So yeah, that we don't need that. That's redundant. Taking the requirements as part of the developer description and grooming and creating the relevant tasks that will allow us to create technical tasks that align with the developer for more accurately. Tasks created from a planning item requirement will be tracked against the requirement. So from a visibility perspective, so product manager be able to see the current progress when I'm looking at the planning item. What I'm trying to do here is not overthink this, but I could go into great detail, right? Again, the goal is that I don't need to do this. I can also deal with alerting. The review date of this could come up, and I could see, oh, we're not even started on 50% of the tasks, etc., etc., etc. But the review date, again, the review date is yours. It's not really a business deadline. That's up for you to manage yourself. The review date is just when do you want to see this again? When do you want to be reminded? So, prioritize community achievements. Do we send to events? Design proposal for user badges. Okay. Nice. Yeah. So task created from planning on we tried to get through comments was yeah, I'm gonna save that there. That update. For those tech designers, would you want to capture them in not in this portion but in the third portion? Right. So yeah, and that's something one line brought up yesterday, right? The technical, so the things like UI UX, things like API documentation that's been sourced by the product manager, etc. Thing or reviews to documents to review by everything should be attached here. But then when it comes to actual design and implementation, then yeah, those tasks would have those extra pieces and notes on them. I think that's a more useful design for me because those tasks aren't going to go away necessarily. They're going to still be historical, but they kind of tell the story of what happened, right? So, yeah, stuff stored in the database, example events and crisis for the badge system. Yeah. So if you were doing a little bit more prep work on architecture, on database design, etc., and you sat down with the developers and talked about it, Trash outline differences in his head than mine. Yeah. Monitor. Sorry for the flicker. This monitor to my right needs unplugging once a day, or it just starts flickering and it drives me nuts. It's an MSI monitor. This LG one, it might be the graphics card because this LG one tends to flicker on and off as well. More community focused badges. Oh, where did that go then? And not as much with threshold badges like bronze, silver. No, I'm not sure what's flickering. But it drives me nuts. So then I go to unplug it and plug it back in, so it's fine. But I realize that it then messes with the display settings, so the stream will see a flicker. So my apologies. Okay, so let's move this on. So this one is going to be promote planning to developer tasks, right? Yeah, that does work. That tracks that. Just want to do something. I want to copy that a second and reload the screen and make sure that that's loading definitely from the server. I think it is, but yeah, it is. Okay. I didn't see the green badge pop up before. So we're going to break out a separate item. Introduce developer tasks. Developer tasks are items that developers are able to work on. A developer task is not formed in business requirements, not formed, is focused on yes, they are. They are going to. I'm going to create an entire new UI layout for devs. So you'll be able to switch between ticketing, planning, and tasking. Or tasks, whatever we call them. Similar to Jira as a platform or the Atlassian platform when you switch between the individual tools. Yes. Yeah. So they're very developer focused. And realistically, we're just talking basically scrum boards. Hey, Mojo. Good morning. So the goal here is very much about the why, because this should still need to be tracked, right? So this still needs to be explained to the business why this is necessary. Developers should be provided with a distinct view and so essentially sprints don't exist in planning. Sprints, if you think about it, sprints don't exist in planning. This is realistically the backlog without definition. Once developers agree to things here and task them out, they go to the developer backlog. So there is a backlog for developers, right? Those items are prioritized. We'll talk about prioritization and stuff as we go. We'll figure that out. My thoughts right now are that basically the product person is going to see the planning items and be able to prioritize them and move them around in some way, and that will carry through to the stories. So the tasks will not actually. One planning item is an epic. It could be one planning item could be one task. It's the interface between the business and the developer, right? It's the conduit, I suppose, is the way I'll put it. So a planning item could be an epic, a planning item could be one task, a planning item could be 5 tasks. The goal is that it doesn't really matter because the business is presenting it as one firm thing. If you think about it, sometimes you've gone through that where it's not quite an epic in terms of we think of an epic as a whole load of stories, so we don't bundle them up and we create five distinct stories because they're not really an epic, but they kind of are an epic. What this does is it joins those things together, and the tasks are the tasks, and they're done independently. Yeah. Yes, the points and dev side again, working on that goal of points are not a planning concept. Points are a developer tool. So maybe the points display here based upon what the dev side says, but I don't think there's no actual points. They're a calculated value here. They're not set on this. We don't say, oh, this is a 5, this is a 10. At this level, you end up doing any level of estimation. Planning items might be months. Planning items, again, this is aimed at trying to represent the business requirements and relay that understanding and join those things together without worrying about the actual technical breakdown of those things. So there's no timeline on this right this second. And honestly, right now, I don't want to enforce the timeline. Once I get this to a point where, and again, I'm doing this next phase because I think it's a valuable component to highlight, here's what my vision is. Um, well, priority wise, the business knows what the priority is in terms of, well, or the assumption is the business knows what the priority is. So a planning item can have priority for certain. Um, the tasks within it would then follow through that priority, right? So the tasks would have to reorganize by priority, but they would do it by virtue of reorganizing planning. Maybe there's a planning view that shows these in a different light. Maybe there's an initiatives where we're tracking initiatives and an initiative takes priority and the planning items under it also take that priority, etc. Um, so yeah. So this developer tasks, there might be an initiative for developer tasks, right? To introduce developer tasks to the system. This planning item is one of those planning items. The other is another planning item, right? I feel like the business is comparing value time provided as a result. Planning items would typically be a sprint goal for us. Possible. Yeah, it's very possible. It aligns to a sprint, but it doesn't need to. That's the point. It can go on as long as it needs to. The goal would be, I would imagine, that with this, I want to make sure that once you started work on the actual planning item, once it's moved into in progress, you can't then go and add additional requirements. Do the business care for story point just complexity and ETA days? That depends on who you ask, doesn't it? I mean, you always have to have some sort of estimation. Um, you always want to understand how long something's roughly going to take. I've been working on something. My estimates on the timelines were all off because I actually had requirements from other people and other challenges that popped up along the way, which meant that my timelines were a month off. Not healthy, not not good, but unfortunately that's the way it is sometimes. So yeah, the business cares very much about the delivery of that. Um, deadlines, well, I kind of talked about deadlines yesterday a little bit, and um, I think that's a business concept to enforce. Um, and if you start enforcing deadlines, then the process breaks down anyway. And this tool might actually be even harder to work in with a deadline based business than a than one focused on the estimation components, just by virtue of what it's built around. Developer tasks are items that developers are able to work on, defined by developers with technical constraints to the system in mind. Developers should be provided with a distinct view of these items. Um, uh, I don't need to that. That doesn't need to be done. So we'll review that again on Friday. I'll send it to Jeffrey, and this is story. Okay, that one. So let's talk about the workflows here. So this is roughly what we're going to create this as tasks, right? And essentially, it's going to slot in here. Happens when I extend this one now. Let's see. Maybe if I'd have extended that one all along, it'd have been fine. Holding shift gives you that. Okay. Does the engineering manager care about dev tasks? Does the team lead? I think DevOps devs definitely do. They should be the main customers. Anyone in the development group, whether that be anyone that is being given tasks to do, is going to care about this component. This is work that is to be done. It is not constrained by it must have a. It cannot be technical. It cannot be. Yes. Yeah. So as a, and I've said developer, but as a engineering focus group, we'll say, whether that be DevOps, whether that be operations specifically, whether that be um, DBAs, whether that be developers. Because again, these tasks, one of the beauties, well, I gotta be careful how I phrase things here. One of the goals is that if we define this, let's say we define this, we had the requirements. Let's say one of those requires a database configuration. Let's say that requires a new database, which it will, right? One of those tasks is going to be for the DBAs to create the database. That goes into their backlog, right? So that's assigned to that group or that team to be done. We haven't even got into Teams yet, right? Teams is not on this anymore, but Teams is a concept that I want to put in somewhere. There's also the task to develop this UI. There's also the task to develop the backend, to develop the components for adding a task to the system, and a task should be etc. 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 Right? Something to capture spikes seems very necessary. Right? Which is sort of what the discussion thing was doing, but that's kind of a huge positive done with everything. So no debate, spikes are still a thing. Spikes don't go away. A spike can still be a task. Hey, Canny, how are you? Good day. Today we are discussing actually using Liquid Sky to plan Liquid Sky. So we're talking about actually creating what we would call stories in Jira, but as we're referring to them here now, tasks. Create a database is probably enough tasks you'd spike for it. So one of the goals I had when I started this out, remember, one of the thoughts I had was how do you deal with seeing who has what involved, who has what assigned to them, and what dependencies do you have? And I kind of termed it as passing the ball originally. So that task could move from team to team to team. But I realized is that that's going to make a mess from an auditing perspective. It's going to make a mess from a visualization perspective. It's going to make a mess from all manner of perspectives. So what if I say, because we know there's requirements, we know there's things to be done. So we say, okay, introduce developer tasks. Okay, so what we need is now we need a new database. We need A new project with the tasks represented. It needs to have an API endpoint. These are tasks, potentially. These are one task, these are many. This is up to the team now, remember, to group the tasks by behavior. If the task is to create the script and not, they don't need any infrastructure. Maybe they don't need a DBA, but they just need to say, we need to create a database. Here's the task. Here's the schema, so we can agree upon it. Here's the UI. Take this, again, ultimately, the goal is that in this screen, I'll be able to attach mockups and assign them to the task, so you can still see when you bring up the task, you know which mockups assigned to which task. If you have a spike in there's nothing saying you can't task out what you do know and have a spike in there that, maybe task A and B are dependent upon the outcome of. So there's nothing to say we couldn't kind of figure out, okay, well, there's a dependency there. That spike needs to be done before these two things. That's handleable. If a spike results in more tasks, that's okay too. You can still create more tasks assigned to this planning item. It's just, again, about transparency and visibility. As I add more tasks, people would be notified tasks are being added to this planning item. So even if the developers decided to do that away from the planning, the product manager who's responsible for that planning item is going to get notified that tasks are being added, right? Now, if they're not pointed and they're mid-sprint, that's a problem, right? Or even if you're being pointed mid-sprint, that's a problem. That's a major problem. But again, even if the developers need to do that, they're not beholden to asking for someone. They're saying, hey, we need to do this. This is for the good of the project. But the transparency is there. The visibility is there. People can be notified. Oh, the work got more complicated. But the developers don't have to worry about changing the documentation on the story. Because what I've seen in the past is, again, stories that that have changed during development, and it has no value in the Jira story and no visibility. So if the requirements change due to a discussion, you have to be tracking the comments or hope that someone's going to add the comments in there to track, oh, this is why this took so long. At least if we're able to think about it as tasks, the likelihood is the developers will add more tasks, which will increase the workload, and everyone will be notified without actually having to worry about being taught to. The developers own the development. If a feature is big enough, a change design should be done. There are others, the process will be overboard. This doesn't remove the requirement for the conversation. This doesn't remove the requirement for professionalism, right? If the requirements change the design, then the discussion has to be had. But again, anybody who cares about that thing can be notified. You can devs creating more tasks equals more workload. Thinking adding a column to a table versus creating an order flow are your current task, which seems like it's on the fringe, since you've done similar work before. Yeah, if and planning is aimed at discussion. It's aimed at figuring out what are the actual requirements based off of, what are the actual needs based off the requirements. So if I go in here and say new, oh, that's interesting, new sizes, area for tasks. As a developer, the planning screen is not useful for me. I should be able to navigate to an area system. And again, this would come with UI requirements, right? This would not just come with a dreamt up spec. So there's things I'm not capable of achieving here that is focused on developer tasks. Right? Ooh, that's a problem. That's a bit of a bug. I know why. I know why. That's loaded now, but the problem is that this isn't available. More tasks from my PV just means more detail in what I'm doing. Work is probably the same, and this is why I'm worried about the word tasks, and why I don't want to say stories, but I do. I want to say something. Again, align what I'm calling a task here to more of a story. It's a component of work that can be done independently. It's independent, it's negotiable, it's valuable, it's estimable, it's small, it's testable, right? That's what I'm calling tasks. Essentially, the story is everything. And I've even called the area story, by the way, not tasks. But and this comes down to we have slightly different definitions of what's involved in a story, how it's broken down, how it's developed. But my idea is here, a task would be um, adding the UI component so you can navigate to this is a task, right? Displaying the list of tasks in there is not that part of that task, right? It's just getting that piece working. A task might be going configuring a database or setting up the scripts. It has value. It is testable. It is small. It is estimable. We can say that's a 0.5 or that's a 1. As a developer, I can track my work between me and DevOps. As an engineering manager, I can track progress applying items in development. Those might be two. If you, those are those lack a bit of definition, but those would be requirements of a component in planning. Yes. Actually, those might be planning items unto themselves. Because what does track mean? What does progress mean? Again, from an understanding perspective, from a purpose perspective, what does the engineering manager care about planning items in development? Yeah. So there's all sorts of questions, and again, that's the point. The point of that is the planning component of the system is aimed at getting those questions out there and not focusing on the technical aspects too soon, but then being able to build the technical aspects from the definitions. That would be the title when I sentence test. But again, what would track be? About 20 steps for devs tracking their work. Oh, that's why it was quiet. um, Anyone watching for the first time, by the way, if you are interested in what I'm doing, if you have questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to join in the conversation. Quite a large system to talk about at this point. So I don't know if you call the title of the test the requirement or the title plus the 20 steps. Anyhow, I shall go to work. Oh, wow, it's 20 past 8. Dota, thank you. I, I'm sure as we progress, we'll process more and more and kind of see where we align and don't align, and it will definitely be a good use case once we start to be able to tinker with this, for you to have a play and see how you align things. So I'm looking forward to that point. What are we doing then? Yeah, it'll be fun. Okay, so a new area for tasks. Um, so one of the challenges here is this as a developer. Progress rank. Why something is delayed if it is PM on high level care about things. I suppose they do care for individual items as well. From a Watson standpoint to business, they care for these most, in my opinion. So again, the reason I'm building this out the way I am is because from the product team or from the management perspective, this is what they see. So this has more tangible, not more tangible. I mean, tangible is that my favorite word of the week? Discernible by the touch, possible to touch, possible to be treated as fact, real or concrete, possible to understand or realize. Yeah, so possible to understand or realize. So the idea of these is, again, these are laid out in the words the business will use. These are laid out in the way that the business will understand. Right. The developer, the requirements is that I didn't tab that out, but anyway, tasks created from a planning item requirement will be tracked against the requirements. So as a product manager, I'll be able to see the current progress when I'm looking at the planning item. So again, the requirements here, the goal is that the requirements will indicate to the point for business. Yeah. So if I'm a product manager or I'm a management level person anyway, I can go into the planning items. I can find out where are we with this challenge with this project by just seeing maybe it's an initiative, maybe it's a single planning item. Again, the titles will become clearer as we move forward. But I'll be able to see the progress. This has 8 stories created on it. Here's how, where they are. So you don't have to drill down and understand the technical requirements to know that this is, low progress, high progress, etc. So um, the anti-manager task management tool. But again, allowing the developers to be technical, I will not say technical resources. That sounds horrible and impersonal. Not everyone's a developer, right? It could be a DBA, it could be a DevOps person, it could be an ops person, it could be a developer, it could be engineering focused people. I almost said resources again. That's again inhuman. Um, Engineering focused people care about the tasks. They care about the actual, or they understand the tasks, not necessarily care about them. If you're an engineering manager, you might actually care more about is your team delivering for this project. But you can report on it from both perspectives, right? You understand the technical requirements and you understand the business requirements, and they're separate. I know. So that's why, and building that out, and the idea will be to show some level of progress here. And I'm actually contemplating how you might be able to drill down and see a further view of, okay, given an initiative, here's the planning items involved, here's all the stories, and kind of see a scrum board um, um, of their progress. Like, are they in the backlog? Are they waiting to be started? Are either in a current sprint? They're in progress in the current sprint or whatever. Because they'll only ever be in one of 4 states, essentially. Some states, like in QA, in testing, etc. I still feel that could be managed on a per team basis. Like, do they have a QA cycle? Ultimately, each team is focused on developing a quality thing, and whether they QA before they do PRs or vice versa, that's up to the teams. But ultimately, it's either it's in the backlog of actual work to be done, it's in the sprint, it's in progress, or it's done. That's all you care about. So yeah, some sort of view there would probably be something I'd be focused on there. So we're going to go with the word tasks for now, just to try and not call them stories, because essentially this is the story, right? This is telling the story of why. This is who you are, why you need this thing, and what it produces, and then the requirements are the outline, the outline by the product, and these again should not become technical. As a developer, the plotting screen is not useful for me. So as a technical as an engineering group member. The planning screen is not useful for me. As an engineering group member, I would like to be able to see a backlog of all work pending. Um, to navigate back to the planning item. No, that's not actually possible right this second. Oh, pending. So that fails, by the way, because there's no user attached and it's trying to display the user. That's a problem. Another interesting tidbit in this book is when he talks about how poor UX gets a pass when the users are being paid to use it. Oftentimes, I don't think that gets a pass. I think that gets a lot of complaints and behind the scenes bitching and moaning, but they just deal with it. So we built a system, or we had a system, my previous place, and it was split between ASP.NET and Silverlight. And the users used it every day, and they just got on with it. And you'd watch them working it, and they each had their own little workarounds and things they would do. But once you started digging and start asking a few more questions, you'd be able to start pulling out the, oh, well, I don't like that button being there. This doesn't make sense. I don't know. I don't like clicking that multiple times, etc. But they wouldn't offer that. You had to dig. I don't know what the actual term is, but they kind of seem in this, it's my job, I'll work in it. And they'll complain and moan about it behind your back. But they won't give it a free pass. We forget about it though. When we're handing software off to people who are being paid to do the job, we don't always consider those things, and we should do. So let's say I produce this task, this planning item, and I show it to developers, right? I want to be able to log in. I want to be able to select a new area as an engineering group member. The planning screen is not useful for me, so I should be able to navigate to an area of the system that's focused on developer tasks. So I want to be able to navigate to that area. That's a useful requirement. I want to be able to navigate, and I want to see the backlog. So if these were put in stories in current Jira, these are stories that are sat there waiting to be pointed, and it looks like a lot of work is pending. The more of these that happen, developers now come along and say, "Okay, let's talk about this." And I'm interested. Developer tasks are items that developers are able to work on, defined by the developers with the technical constraints of the system in mind. Developers should be provided, and I should really say, engineering tasks, items that engineer defined by technical constraints system man members should be provided with this. You got to be careful there. I don't want to say the word engineer. It's pretentious, but we call them engineering group. I don't believe all developers are engineers. By the way, that's interesting. It pops does a pop up as well now. I think that's a side. I think that's a quirk of something interesting. By the way, given that, I'd be interested if you're paying attention enough. If I sat down now and showed you this, what questions would you ask? I'm just going to give that a second just to see if anyone does have any opinions. Are you officially dog fooding? I'm starting to dog food. I'm starting to test the system by trying to develop the tasks in the system. I'm not officially dog fooding. I'm kind of using it to kind of be happy that I'm going to throw them out. But yeah. But it is a start of my testing, I suppose. But I'd be interested. If you're looking at that, what questions do you ask? I'm going to just if you're the developer being asked to review this so to see what tasks you need to create from this, the PM sat down and thought long and hard, all of 30 seconds, written out this planning item, and now they're asking you, hey, we need to develop the actual tasks to be worked on here so we can point them. What questions do you have? So they've said the need. They've said here we need to be able to say to the engineering group, the planning system is not the piece we want, right? You need to see a different perspective. So we need to create a new area for the tasks. So we should be able to log in and see a different area, right? Maybe it's a different color scheme, etc. Imagine there's some UI UX attached to this, obviously. And then we should see the backlog. As an engineering group member, I would like to be able to see a backlog of all work pending. Now, tasks does not exist. That is the assumption because this is the actual introduction of developer tasks. I am deliberately pausing. I'm deliberately giving it a second just to see if anyone wants to answer. Um, does this assume that there's agreed upon tasking process? Doesn't assume anything. That's what you're asking. So, as far as assumptions go, the idea of promoting requirements to tasks is a separate concern, right? So, taking the planning items and making them tasks is a separate concern. This is to do that story. We don't have anything around building that anyway. So again, and this is our alignment with Jira that's causing a problem. I think me using the word task. if we're aligning to Jira, what we're ultimately trying to create here is the stories as we put them in Jira. That's what we're trying to define here. So this is grooming and story planning. This is the phase where the developers sit down with the product team, the product introduces it, says, here's what we want to do, here's why we want to do it, this is the problem it's solving. The problem it's solving is the engineering group do not care about the planning perspective. They want to see a completely different perspective because all they care about is what work do I have to do? So the first question is, what is a task? So you're right there. There is no tasking process. We don't know what a task consists of. So what is the backlog? We haven't defined adding a task. I'd probably ask more about what the distinct view should be. For the view of what? Right. So the assumption here is, right. And again, this is why you ask the questions. This is why you dig. And it's why no question is necessarily a stupid question if it's clarified, right? As an engineering group member, the planning screen is not useful for me. I should be able to navigate to an area of the system that's focused on developer tasks. Again, this would probably have, or, you know, at that point you would say, hey, we need a UI UX mockup for that, right? We can't proceed. We need to know what that should look like. When navigating, the user should be taken to a blank screen. Right. Now, this could become a task of its own. It might be many tasks, right? It might be one task, it might be many tasks, because obviously there's creating the project and configuring all that, etc. Exactly. You shouldn't start that. So I do not have the talent or time necessary to spend an entire stream trying to figure out how to get a button to appear on a screen in a UI UX mockup. But yeah, you would ask for a Figma file. And that's right. That's the right thing to do. Because again, hey, I'll just put this button here. It'll be fine. Right? You don't want to do that. You want definition of what people are expecting to see, because when you deliver requirement or deliver software that does not match the expectation, people will have issues. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll go by happily tooling along through life and not worry about it. But invariably they will have issues. But yes, so this is the user is going to be taken to a blank screen in the new layout. See the backlog. As an engineering group member, I would like to be able to see a backlog of all work pending. Well, we don't know what work's pending yet, right? So they've made an assumption that we have tasks, but we don't have tasks yet. So as an engineering, create a task. As an engineering group member, I should see a button on the dashboard. We'll call it tasks for now. I click the button. I should be presented with a pop-up. Title, description. We're going to leave review date out of this right this second. Just purely because I think review date is still managed by planning. Early on, I felt that everything should get a review date, but the more I go through this, the more I feel that review date is kind of a tracking concept for keeping an eye on work. We'll have to get into that more deeply. Should these task be assigned to a team, right? Um, so similar, they can a task could potentially span multiple projects, right? Project is a grouping, a category, a searchable piece. Right this second. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go into break. No. There you go. That is caused by the fact that it does not, when I hit create, it doesn't have this information. So it crashes the screen and it still sent it, but then when I reload it, it doesn't show. Hey Napalm, how you doing? Similar to priorities, should there be a distinguished must have versus nice to have? Must have versus nice to have. At this point, there's no real concept of that. That's again to be driven out here, right? So the idea of this is we're not creating a backlog of work. We're creating a pool of ideas and thoughts and opinions and discussion points to generate actual intended work from. So there's no nice to have. There's just if this yields doing something, then that's good. So again, creating a task and seeing the backlog. Now the backlog is usable. So this one can't be done without this one. So there would be some sort of, as we create the tasks for this, there would be there would be a dependency. But the goal of creating the tasks is so that they can be engineering focused. And the reason being, like this is a requirement, right? So as a QA, if I look at the planning item, I say, okay, well, I should be able to see a new screen. It should be blank. So if they get this story done, the store, let's say we create two tasks for this, etc. When those tasks are done, this is testable. Independently, those tasks are testable, but maybe there's one task, maybe there's two tasks, whatever. The QA can validate this requirement. Again, the QA can validate this requirement. The QA can validate this requirement. The individual tasks that go into making up the requirement might not be QAable. They might be, but they don't. This is the validation of the actual expected work. So, but again, even those tasks should be independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable, right? So those tasks still should follow the rules. So again, if you are new to the stream, if you are watching and not quite sure what's going on, you're more than welcome to ask questions. I notice I know there's not a lot of development going on, but this is all development focused to try and get the next couple of days set up for development. We're talking about design. So what we're talking about here is adding this component into the system now. We're talking about being able to add this component in into the overall system, the tasks, as we're calling them right this second. And again, I'm still open to discussion at this point, right? So what I'm trying to avoid is aligning with something like Jira, where I'm saying they're stories, because realistically, the planning is telling the story. This is the story. The story yields workable objects. So the requirements of the story, from here, the goal is And again, I probably should try and do some UI UX mock-up here. But the idea is that what we'd say is, okay, we're ready to plan it. We're ready to actually, right. So this is when we say it's ready for planning. So let's do that. Let's move this to ready for planning, right? When we say this is ready for planning, we can now take these items and discuss them, validate them, and have any extra expectations added. Maybe there's extra requirements, maybe there's clarification required, maybe there's UI UX, and we can bounce it back, and it can go. The review date can change to 3 days from now, 4 days from now, whatever. And once we're comfortable that this is understood, we can say, oh, now start the process of generating tasks for these things. So the idea being that you would do another dialogue and you'd say, okay, well, here's the requirements for this requirement. Let's create a task to do this. Let's create a task to do this. Let's create a task to do this. And they all get assigned to or they get attached to the requirement. And that's what the developers work on. The developers work on those tasks of the requirement, not of the planning item. I've thought through this a lot. I'm not perfect. I may have missed some things. Priorities we'll get to. Priorities add in another layer of complexity that I'm not ready for until I see that workflow, right? And the reason I'm focusing on this and not just getting planning all tightened up and buttoned up is because as a developer, if you're watching this stream and you're wondering what the heck I'm doing, this is all product management focused. This is not on the developer. The goal is to be able to get to the developers' pieces and demonstrate those pieces so that the developers can go off and work on the work. Everything that's in the backlog is stuff they've agreed to. Everything that's in the backlog, they can point, they can size accurately. They can break down those components as they need, not as the business defines these. These don't change. So if let's say I create 2 tasks for this, and I go to point them, and one of them's an 8, and we say, oh, that's a bit too big for us. We want to break that down. How do we break it down? Oh, we can break it up into 2 different tasks. The first task is to get this piece in place, and the second task is to get this piece in place. That's a 3 and a 3. Okay, we do that. Those tasks can be created, and this doesn't change. The requirement doesn't change. It's just how you're meeting the requirement. So far from what I've gone through, I believe this does meet that need. This does allow us to achieve that. Basic stuff, maybe a place to capture requirement document as in a link or something to it, maybe, or maybe back to your planning item if it covers everything. A place to capture technical overview of what you need to be done and which components need to be created and modified. A place to capture a list of components of downstream systems which will be impacted by this change, so QA can test it and we can work with dependent systems. A list of dev tasks or changes to get this done. A testing task to be done. Definition of done, as in from development standpoint, like test update doc, and from business standpoint, like that. Definition done is definitely an important thing to figure out in an organization. It's something that should be agreed upon, something that should be understood, and it should be something that is held to and respected by the development team. Technical documentation. So technical stuff. So there's this attachments component, right? So in here, you can attach whatever you want to attach, right? That is open. This is actually a global system. So when it comes to the tasks, attachments will be available for the tasks as well. So we'll be able to attach a task. Attachments is its own component of the system. Right now, backed by Azure, but ultimately backed by other things. So attachments is definitely something I have considered. List of components up downstream systems which will be impacted by this change. That's an interesting one. And I think that comes through closer interaction with the QA group. Again, I'm going to try and define team. Team is everybody involved in the process of producing the software. A group is a component of the team. So the development group, the QA group, the product management group, all of them combined, communicating and being transparent with one another is what makes effective software. If you start to assign them as teams, then you've got them and us. That's what I've seen. That's what I saw last week, and that's what I didn't like. And Findle, hello, how you doing? To be determined gamer. I've been there before. Findle is also a .NET developer, very talented .NET developer, doing all sorts of cool stuff from migrating older .NET framework apps to modern .NET and all the challenges that come with that. They're all teams of one, and I'm in all the teams. I mean, if you're generating something or consuming something from other teams, then we need to work with them as well. It's not standalone. Right. But again, this discussion, the idea of assigning it to individual teams, identifying the work to be done. We might identify a technical requirement that is not ours to handle. So if the development team is sat down with the development group, is sat down with the, again, we have the teams concept, unfortunately. If the developers that are part of this particular group are sat down with the PM and they identify a need for another team to do something, they can still make the task. They could reach out to that team, that group. They could do all sorts of other stuff. Again, there's only so much a tool can do. People and interactions over processes, right? You need them to go out and talk and say, hey, by the way, we need some DevOps help here. We need this other team, this other group. So yeah, understanding APIs, understanding dependencies. Again, if I'm working on the and again, associated projects is a tag right now, but that might actually align with the way we build software. It's not necessary that a group is going to work on the same project all the time, so that's why this is built in that way. So it's not this; it's way less than this. But even my team and one use Kanban boards to keep track of what should be doing next. Yeah, it's useful to know what's what. Mr. Anhorn, good day. How you doing? And again, this is a management tool. This is not a developer tool. This tasking component that we're creating or we're about to create, that is the development focused aspect of this entire platform. That is actually the smallest component of this entire platform overall, right? We need to not have every little detail, but at least we need to know these guys are impacted and need to do something about it. Yes, right. And again, that's why even if this is assigned to different, even if the tasks in here are assigned to 4 different groups, they still roll up onto this requirement. So from a management perspective, I can see this product, this planning item, it has work in flux or it has work that's pending. It's at risk. It needs, we expect it by then, but hold on, it's not going to hit then. Just writing up a new mandate to help with our front end work. So it's going to be a fun day. Nice. Yes. I am hoping for a fun day too. Because a lot of the tooling we use, a lot of these things we use is about visibility. Transparency is key in all parts of software development, but it's not always easy to achieve. And I'm hoping that this process, this slight change to the way we do things, would actually allow the product team to be able to be more expressive and descriptive of what they're asking for, the developers to ask the right questions before they agree to work, and actual known work is what makes up the backlog. The backlog is actual known and understood work. It is not something to be further groomed and refined. It can be groomed and refined before it even gets there. And maybe it's trimmed, maybe it is removed, maybe they remove a requirement, but that would pull the tasks that are associated with that item away as well. There, we're going to get into soft deletes, by the way. We're not going to do hard deletes on some of those things. Right. I know we did delete on the requirement, but we'll get deeper into that. And again, I'm not scared to change that. I've contemplated what that means for that association. So ultimate goal, be able to click in here, say, okay, now let's plan. And this will allow us to say, okay, given these requirements, we want to produce these tasks. The developers can have developer focused tasks, or the engineering group, however I keep my term, right? But the developers that are associated with this particular planning item are able to task it out. It can be understood from that perspective. The developers can then break up things as they want. They can point them independently, and the business can see the progress towards any given planning item. You know, if these three have 3 tasks associated, so there's 9 tasks and one's done on each component, then the planning item is the third done, right? And the business can attach priorities, the business can attach whatever it wants to this, but they know that this is 1/3 done. It's, you know, at 33% completed. Maybe we show, you know, in progress, so we can show 33% completed, you know, 10% in progress, etc. That is the goal. So as much as I want to jump in and code, as much as I want to start hacking the system and adding things in, I do want to make sure that I'm considering this and at least aligning my own thoughts on, and not just my own thoughts, but how to present them to you as a viewer. Because if I'm talking about this stuff and I start talking about tasks, our brains, if we've used Jira, might go to Jira, story has tasks, or you can assign a task, right? There will be no stories in the um, in the development component of the system or the engineering component of the system, right? My ultimate goal is to be an icon up here. You click that, you go to planning, you go to development, you go to uh, ticketing, right? So you click here, you get a drop down. It's a planning or development. You click on development, and you see a different view that would give you the list of. It would start with the backlog. And that backlog would be a global backlog. There's no, oh, it's a backlog for this team or this team. You could filter by teams, but it's a global backlog, right? So you can know how much work is outstanding there. But then as a developer going in, you'd be able to go into your team's board and see your backlog. You'd be able to see your current sprint, etc. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the way I'm thinking. And as always, I'm genuinely interested in opinions. You know, you watching the stream, you care in some way about software development. It's not, you can't have sat here for X number of time and not be interested in this at all. Um, and that my voice is extremely easy to just sit and do stuff to. So that's productive, I suppose. Um, but I'm interested in feedback. I'm interested in opinions. I'm interested in, if you want to add thoughts and ideas into the Discord, there is a channel. I'm here for your winning personality. Wow, thanks. There is an actual stream agile project management category, a Discord channel. You're more than welcome to post things you find out, opinions you see, or opinions you have in there. Um, yeah, maybe you should draw something on paper or wireframe on how the UI should look like for a dev, so you can refine it before you start coding. So the problem is I don't want to get too focused on the UI because I want to overhaul the UI. I need the basics. Um, so again, the tasking is going to look something like this, right? Creating a task is going to look something like that. The actual board, the task board is going to look something like this without the categories. So it's going to just look like this. There's no review date right now. There's a team, there's projects, there's a, whatever. We'll get into the details of what the data should look like tomorrow. But overall, I'm not trying to figure this out from the UI perspective, because I feel that I'm not good enough on the UI, and that will slow me down massively to wireframe that. And I'll get bored. I also worry that, especially for me, that UI dictates data design, whereas if I figure out the data first, I think was it you, Napalm, yesterday, talking about the inform versus dictate? And for me, if I go start messing with UI now, it's going to define my database. It's going to define the way I think about the objects. So I gotta be careful with that. But yeah, I see the benefit, Manoj. I definitely see the benefit in that. But yeah, right now it's going to look. Maybe if I can figure out a different color. Yeah, title, description, assigned. Yeah. Yeah, I have a problem with time. When I finish the stream very shortly, I start work, I finish work, I do 1 or 2 karate classes, depending on the night. Then I go to sleep. Then I get up in the morning. I have about half an hour to 45 minutes before the stream. Then I start the stream. And so most days you are seeing my entire time. So if I go off and start messing around with UI UX, we'll be sat there for days doing UI UX, because it'll just take me that long to even get comfortable with it. So it's a balance I've got to kind of figure out. And is it the right way? No. If I had more time, I would definitely sit down and figure those out. But this is a challenge, and this is actually I'm actually suffering from some of the same problems that the tooling I'm trying to create is meant to solve. I'm suffering from, I'm making compromises, I'm cutting corners, I'm accepting I'm not going to be able to do this perfectly, and I'm trying to move forward. So I'm kind of waterfalling my way through a tool that's meant for more agile practices. So I see the problems, and I will try and address them. But yeah, I have no UI UX capabilities. So, well, no good capabilities. So if I open up Figma or something, a rough layout is going to bug me. So tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what this means. What does a task look like? So to the same vein, right? What fields do we need? What fields do we know we need right now? I believe is going to sit something like this, right? This might get removed. Neither am I really, but I wanted to start with UI on my side project this time to keep me entertained. All right. See, the APIs I feel are more attainable to me, so I would go to the APIs. The UI UX, I feel basically what happens with me, and I don't know if this happens to anybody else, but what I'll do is I'll start trying to do a UI UX mockup. Like, it's why these buttons are misaligned, it's why there's some quirks in here now. And I'll get laser focused on trying to get the UI UX to look the way I want it to look. And it'll look like rubbish. And I get frustrated. And I get tired. Then I get bored. And then I give up. So I don't like doing things that naturally frustrate me, because I'm so bad at them that I know how I will react to them. And I can give up. Right? I can walk away from this. I'm not being paid to do this. Grid Square, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. welcome in. And again, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions, you're more than welcome to share. I'm learning Blazor, so kind of know I will spend more time there. Yeah, I get the UI UX stuff is something I struggle in all the time. If I have the components built in the back end, I have a focus, so it's a little easier because then I have something to attach it to. I have something that I'm actually aiming for straight away. So, but as far as UI UX mockup stuff goes, it's why I didn't spend a great deal of time. I just merged this story with these looking as terrible as they look, because I already spent an hour trying to align them in different ways, and it drove me crazy. I was like, no, I'm done. I don't need to worry about that right now. Again, I'm trying to focus on the things that trying to focus on the things that will move the project forward, increase my ability to introduce it to everyone. So yeah, just showed up and like to see this sort of content. Thanks for sharing the knowledge. No worries. This is apologies from my experience. No need to apologize. I'm asking for the input. I really do appreciate the insights. I like to draw something so as know what the users need, and it helps from the API data services as well. But everyone has a different approach. So one of the problems this has is there's no battle testing here. There's nothing other than my desires to drive it. So what I'm trying to do is only introduce things bit by bit by bit. Again, holding on to that. I'm not scared of the code, right? I'm not scared of the backend development, right? This is all changeable. And if you've watched the stream for any amount of time, you've seen me pull entire components out of this. You've seen me redesign the entire structure. You've seen me remove technologies and introduce new technologies, etc. You've seen that happen. I'm not scared of the code. And I think that's what makes me confident in doing this the way I'm doing it, is because I can say, I can do the bare minimum. If the bare minimum doesn't fit, I can remove or add as I need. So I can address that as I go and kind of test the waters. What I'd like to get to, and I know that I'm overrunning today, what I'd like to get to is the point where I can say to you guys who are watching, do you want to play with this? And here you can sign up a tenant and you can go off and do your own, build out your own project. And then I can look at them and say, hey, this is where it is. Well, not only do they show water you can buy from Amazon in the commercials, they now show herpes meds ads. Ouch. I do apologize for ads. It's not something that I would have on, but otherwise, as an affiliate, you just get presented with pre-rolls and stuff. And I think removing pre-rolls is a definite benefit to get people into the stream. You just, unfortunately, Grid Square, you joined right before ads were about to run, I think. Public beta testing. Public insight. I don't even consider that a beta test. What I'd like to do is allow you to see what it is. Because again, I'm trying to do something different than Jira. I'm trying to do something different. I haven't seen this way of doing it. Maybe it exists. Maybe Jira has this capability. We just don't use it, in which case, why the hell not? And I've said since day one, right? This is a year of development now. I've said since day one, if someone was to run off and implement this, and this becomes a thing in real life product tools, great. Everyone benefits from being more clear about what is a requirement versus what is an actual technical specification. Everyone benefits from more visibility and transparency in the process. So, and it's not just about the stories, right? It's about who sees what when and who can be told about what. So, but fortunately, that is all I have time for today. I will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we're gonna focus on this component specifically. We're gonna figure out building the tasks component. We're gonna figure out. Hi Sally, sorry. I would love to stay around for longer. Trust me. I love the longer streams. We're going to figure out what the task component looks like. We're going to build out the API for that, start getting the ability to add a task in there, get the unit test written around these components, and then start to work on, because once we've built that out, we can start to build the UI out. And again, I can get into the UI weeds a bit. But we'll figure this out tomorrow. We'll start talking about this and getting some of this constructed. So we'll be adding, I would imagine, projects number 75, 76, 77, and 78 at least. So, yeah. As always, if you know of any good application developers that are streaming at the same time as me that you would recommend, I'm always open to a good suggestion. I don't know of any of the .NET devs that stream at the same time as me regularly. In my list, there is only game devs. Thank you, Manoj. Thank you, Napalm. Thank you, Sally. I appreciate it. So if not, we will go over to Andreas today. We did full box yesterday. Andreas is building his own game engine. He's also in a duck costume, so that's entertaining. So I always am bad at shout outs as well. So if you like .NET content, Dindle, I shouted out before, but One Lion is also a .NET developer. If you haven't been over to his stream, it's a great place to hang out. Again, there's a whole bunch of good discussion there. He uses Blazor as well. I need to remember to be better at shoutouts, so that's why we'll be doing a slight project detour in a couple of weeks. But for now, I'm going to raid Andreas. Have a great day. Thank you very much for your time. The Discord is there if you want to join. If you are interested in talking about more off stream, I'm always open to that. So take care. Have a great day all. Bye.